Alright guys, welcome to video 2 for Constitution Day, the Bill of Rights. Now, if you're wondering what the Bill of Rights are, even though it says bill, I don't want you to think about bill from the first video, which is something that's not a law yet but has to be voted on by Congress. This is just a term. The Bill of Rights are the first 10 amendments to the Constitution. Now, if you're asking yourself, what is an amendment? In the Constitution, there is a rule that allows you to amend or add things to the Constitution. So let's say you think, oh, now something needs to be fixed here. We can amend it, add an amendment to the Constitution. So the first 10 amendments, the first 10 things added to the Constitution, first 10 rules, or should we say, not rules so much as, here are the freedoms that the government cannot violate. The first 10 amendments to the Constitution are called the Bill of Rights. Now, why do we study the first 10 especially? By the way, all the amendments, there's 26 altogether, all of them are important. But the first 10 amendments are important because there would have been no Constitution without it. The states, remember the 13 colonies? Well, those 13 states were very scared of a dictator, of having a dictator, having a king with absolute power take over the country. So they weren't satisfied with just, oh, no, we'll pass these Bill of Rights later once you guys vote on the Constitution. The states, the 13 states said, hey, if you want us to vote on this Constitution, we need these Bill of Rights in the Constitution to begin with when we vote on the Constitution. So that is where our Bill of Rights comes from. And if you look at the Bill of Rights, which we're about to, they're very important. So we don't want this video to go too far. Remember, we're just kind of doing some of the basics. So let's take a look at the first 10 amendments to the Constitution. All right, so I'm going to try to move out of the way so you guys can see this. I highlighted in red some different parts to try to make some things stand out. So Amendment 1, Congress shall make no law respecting the establishment of religion, prohibiting the free exercise thereof, or abridging freedom of speech or the press or the right of the people to peaceably assemble and to petition the government for redress of grievances. So this First Amendment has 5 freedoms that it focuses on. Freedom of religion, so you have the establishment of religion. So in other words, Congress can't make a law creating a state church. So there can't be, the Georgia Baptist Church and everyone has to pay taxes to that church. So there can't be a state church and the government can't stop you from freely exercising your religion. Second, freedom of speech. Now, by the way, freedom of speech, I always tell my students, this is freedom of speech. This means that the government cannot come along and stop you from exercising your freedom of speech in terms of, when we're talking about political speech. This does not mean that you can go home to your house and say whatever you want to your parents, and then when you get punished, you're like, no, I have freedom of speech. No. Your freedom of speech means that you can speak out against the government, or you can vote in any way that you want, and the government can't come and throw you in prison. Okay, so you have freedom of speech. Freedom of the press. So the press cannot be run by the government. People are allowed to protest peaceably. That's something, if you look at the news, I think a lot of people have forgotten. You have the right to protest, but you have the right to protest peacefully, right? Otherwise, it's against the law and you can be thrown in prison if you're protesting by burning things to the ground. So you have the right to protest peaceably. That's Amendment number 1. So think about it. Religion, there's 2 parts to religion. So religion, speech, press, and the right to protest peaceably. All 4 of those freedoms are in the First Amendment. Amendment 2, I'm going to go a little bit fast. Obviously, you can stop this video and you can go back if you need to. So Amendment number 2, a well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. That means that the people, the citizens of the country, are allowed to own, in this case, I'm about to say, own guns. So you are allowed to own firearms. And the reason why this is in place is because, remember we said that the states were worried about a dictator coming to power? Well, the people can actually defend themselves. That is the right of the people to keep and bear arms. So to be able to keep guns and to be able to use those guns. So that way, if you look at history, and when we get to World War II, we'll talk about this. Pretty much every dictator that we've seen in the 20th century, one of the first things that they do is get rid of the people's right to bear arms. Because if I'm going to be a dictator, if I'm going to take power and take freedom away from you, I don't want you being able to defend yourself. So the right of the people to keep and bear arms is very important. And you're going to look at all these first 10 amendments. They all go to that idea of keeping a dictator, to keeping an absolute monarch from coming to power in the United States. So they want the people to be able to defend themselves. Now, for the next 7 amendments, I'm not going to read it out, but I'm just going to go ahead and tell you what the freedoms are, because some of them are a little bit long, and nothing's more boring on YouTube than to have someone just reading it from the screen. All right, something you shouldn't do. But if you have questions, again, I'll be in conference. Talk to me. I'll help you out however I can. All right, here we go. See if I can move out of the way so you guys can see this a little bit better. All right, Amendment 3. Basically, there's a war in the United States. U.S. soldiers are not allowed to take over your house without permission. We call this quartering. So, whether in peacetime or in war, guess what? Soldiers cannot be quartered in your house without consent. In other words, if I'm a U.S. soldier, I'm in the middle of a war in the U.S., I can't take over your house without your permission. All right? You are still a homeowner in peacetime, in wartime. All right? All right, Amendment 4. All right, so if we're looking at Amendment 4, this deals with a lot of legal and criminal matters. So if you think about Amendment 4, you are protected, the people, the rights of the people are protected against unreasonable searches and seizures. In other words, not seizure as in the medical condition, by the way, but the police can't come into your house and just search and take things without a warrant. So this is where that idea, if you guys have ever heard of, oh, hey, we need a warrant, the police need a warrant, that's where this comes from. So you're protected against unreasonable searches and seizures, and the police have to have a warrant, and it can only be issued upon probable cause. So I can't look at you and go, oh, he's wearing a Falcons jersey. I don't like Falcons. All right, let's get a warrant to go search this place. Okay, it can't be something silly like that. I'm obviously making that up. But if I have evidence, if I'm the police, I go to the judge and say, hey, this is the evidence we have so far on this person. We need a warrant to be able to go into their house and find this, this, and this based on the evidence we have. And if the judge feels like there's enough evidence, he issues a warrant, and there you go. So that's Amendment 4. So all those things you hear about warrants, it comes from the 4th Amendment. All right, and by the way, there's some things that I'll skip as we go along, just to kind of keep this short, but you can pause this and look at it. Again, talk to me if you have any questions. All right, Amendment 5. You notice Amendment 5 is kind of long, all right? But let's take a look at Amendment 5, all right? So with Amendment 5, by the way, how many people have heard, I plead the 5th? If you've heard that, it means the 5th Amendment. So I plead the 5th, meaning that I don't have to incriminate myself. So if let's say that I know I'm guilty of something, or I'm afraid that let's say I'm innocent, but I'm afraid to incriminate myself if I say something. I don't have to say anything. Now, by the way, this is when we're talking about criminal matters. If you go home and your parents say, where were you today? If you go, oh, I plead the 5th Amendment, dude, you are in so much trouble, you're going to be grounded for the rest of your life. This does not apply to you. Oh, I don't want to tell anything to my parents because then I'll be in trouble. Nope. This deals with criminal matters, okay? So, a couple things for us. There's no double jeopardy. So let us say that you are charged with murder, okay? Let's say you're charged with murder. You go to court, and you're accused of killing Mr. McGee. That's terrible. You shouldn't do that. But you're accused of killing Mr. McGee. And let's say the trial happens and you are found innocent. The prosecutor can't go, man, all right, well, we'll just try them again. We'll just keep on trying them until we get the verdict we want. Nope. Once that verdict's in and you're innocent, I can't try again for the same murder. Now, if you go out and murder somebody else, well, that's a different matter. But I can't keep on trying you for the same crime until I get the verdict that I want. So no double jeopardy. Also, again, I can't force you to incriminate yourself. Also, there has to be due process. So you might lose your life. In other words, you could be executed. You might be put in prison. You might lose property because you have to pay a fine. But those things can only happen after you've had due process. In other words, you have to go through the trial. The person has to prove that you are guilty. I can't just take those things without you having the chance to defend yourself. So that's due process if you want to think about that. All right, here we go. Amendment number 6, you have the right to a speedy and public trial. So that means that if you look at some dictatorships around the world, you get thrown in prison, you get arrested, you'll have your trial 15 years later, 20 years later. You've been in prison for 20 years, then you get a trial. That's why the Founding Fathers said, nope, you have the right to a speedy and a public trial. So it can't be a secret trial either. So in other words, everything has to be out in the open where everyone can see it. There has to be, as quickly as is humanly possible, let's get you to trial if you've been arrested, and therefore you actually have the chance to defend yourself. Evidence hasn't disappeared because it's 20 years later. And it also has to be public so that people can actually see what's going on. All right? So you can have a jury as well. Also, you have the right to be confronted with the witnesses against you. So if someone has accused you, they say, let's say Mr. McGee says, I saw Artavius. Artavius was there at the bank, and he robbed that bank. I witnessed it with my own eyes. Well, guess what? Artavius gets to know who it is that's accusing him. Because how is he going to defend himself if he doesn't know who the person is who's saying, I saw you in the bank, all right? Not that Artavius would never actually rob a bank, okay? But that would be, if you think about it, that's what confronting your witnesses means, all right? Also, you have the right to counsel for your defense. So you've ever heard that, hey, you have the right to an attorney. If you can't afford one will be given to you. If you've ever watched any of those law shows, that's what this is talking about. So you have the right to assistance from counsel for your defense. So you have the right to a lawyer. All right. Amendment number 7. All right. This one I'll read a little bit. In suits at common law, where the value in controversy shall exceed $20, the right of trial by jury shall be preserved. So if we're dealing with a lawsuit or any sort of trial where the value of whatever is in the lawsuit is over $20, you do have the right to a trial by jury. Now, you gotta remember though, when this was written in the late 1700s, yeah, $20 was actually a lot of money. Okay, so just keep that in mind. So it's not saying, oh, all right, $20 today, it costs you more than $20 to go to trial. All right. Once you have had a trial by jury, if it's appealed, other higher courts can't. They can't examine the facts of the case, other than, hey, were the procedures right? All right, but they can't just go back and go, yeah, I don't like that case. All right, we're just throwing out the case itself on the facts. So you can't have a retrial as you appeal your case. All right. So in other words, there's different levels of courts, and as you go up, so once you have your initial trial, even if you don't like the ruling and you appeal to a higher court, that higher court can't go back and look at the facts. They can only go and look back and say, okay, did you have due process? Were you able to get an attorney? Those kind of things. But they can't actually look at the facts of the case. All right, Amendment 8. I know we're going kind of fast, but these are the first 10 minutes. So Amendment 8, excessive bail shall not be required, nor excessive fines imposed, nor cruel and unusual punishments inflicted. So, if, let's say Dina is driving. She is driving down the road, and she drives 15 miles over the speed limit. Her fine cannot be $100,000. You don't get fined $100,000 for speeding. So no excessive fines, no cruel and unusual punishment. So I can't, let's say Trayvon. Trayvon is on trial. Okay, let's say, Trayvon was shoplifting. He stole something from the local grocery store. Well, guess what? His sentence, when he's found guilty, they can't execute him for shoplifting. Okay? So no execution for shoplifting, and it can't be cruel and unusual punishment. So if, let's go with Raymond. If Raymond's on trial, let's say Raymond is caught speeding. He's speeding at 15 miles over the speed limit. His punishment can't be, I'm going to tie you up and put you in a pile of fire ants for an hour. That can't be cruel and unusual, okay? So it has to be something, the punishment has to fit the crime, right? The goal isn't to torture you. The goal, though, is for you to actually face punishment for the wrong that you did, and hopefully to learn from it and not do it again. And also, that way other people see it and they don't do it as well. All right, amendment number 9. Enumeration, that's a numbered list. Just think of it that way, as a numbered list. So the list in the Constitution of certain rights shall not be construed or denied, or to deny or disparage others. So in other words, hey, guess what? We have a list of amendments. We have a list of freedoms in the Constitution. That should not be understood by people to deny others that aren't just spelled out in the Constitution. So I can't say, for instance, well, we went over freedom of speech, right to bear arms, no quartering of soldiers. We did all that, but you know what? There was nothing in there that says that I can't hit Corey over the head with a 2x4. So that must mean I'm allowed to hit Corey over the head with a 2x4. No, just because it's not spelled out everything in the Constitution doesn't mean that there aren't other rights that are still retained by Corey and other people, all right? So I hope that makes sense. So I can't look and go, well, it doesn't say that I can't hit Corey with a 2x4, so that must mean it's okay. No, that does not mean it's okay just because it's not in there. All right, Amendment 10. The powers that are not given to the United States by the Constitution, meaning Washington, D.C., the government of Washington, D.C. If powers are not given to Washington, D.C., and they're not denied to the states, in other words, if there's a power in the Constitution that isn't given to Washington, D.C., and it doesn't say that the states aren't allowed to have it, well, then it automatically goes to the states. An easier way to think about that would be, if nobody knows who the power goes to, it goes to the states. That's the best way to think about it. So, if I don't know if there's a power, and I can't tell in the Constitution who gets that power, it goes to the states. All right? Those are the first 10 amendments, and I know I went really fast through that. Your goal for me with this, I want you to go ahead, tell me, if you had the power, what rule would you add to the Constitution? What amendment would you add? We'll call it Amendment 27, since there's 26 amendments. What would the 27th Amendment, what kind of rule would you add to the Constitution? I just want you to give me one sentence, all right? You can put that under your list of Supreme Court justices if you want to do that. Or in other words, go back into what you submitted and just add to that, okay? So that's the best way. I think that's going to be good for today. I want to hear what your thoughts are. I want to hear, okay, what would you add to the Constitution? All right? One more video to go. We're going to talk about presidential elections. All right, take care, guys. Bye.